My name is Thomas, and I live with my family on a small farm in rural Texas. We're not wealthy, far from it, but we've always had just enough to get by. I raise cattle and grow vegetables, and my wife, Amanda, works part-time as a substitute teacher at a nearby school. Our son, Noah, is 7 years old. He's always been full of energy, curious, kind, and always asking questions about the sky, about God, and why the leaves fall from the trees in autumn. Everything changed last March. Noah started having dizzy spells, leg pain, and a fever that kept coming back. At first, we thought it was something simple, a virus from school, maybe just exhaustion. But as the days passed, he grew pale and quiet. The life seemed to drain from him. We took him to local doctors and then to a hospital in the city. After dozens of tests and days of agonizing uncertainty, we were given the diagnosis: childhood leukemia. I can't quite put into words what I felt in that moment. It was as if the ground had opened beneath us. Amanda broke down in tears but tried to be strong in front of Noah. I, on the other hand, went quiet. A silence that wrapped around me like a heavy coat. I didn't know how to fight something so cruel, so unfair. Our child, so full of life, was now tethered to tubes and medication, trapped inside white hospital walls that smelled like antiseptic. The treatments began. We were constantly traveling to and from the hospital. The neighbors gave us those pitiful looks, the kind that hurt more than comfort. The land I used to care for so diligently went dry and neglected. Our well nearly ran dry during one of the hottest summers in decades. And between the brutal heat of the fields and the cold, sterile air of the hospital, I felt like I was splitting in two, torn between being a provider and a protector. Amanda prayed every single day. She knelt beside Noah's bed, clutching an old rosary passed down from her grandmother, asking the Virgin Mary for a miracle. I'd been raised Catholic, but my connection to God had faded long ago. Still, one night, after a particularly painful day where Noah couldn't eat or even open his eyes, I walked out to the front porch and looked up at the sky. Under that blanket of stars, I cried like a child. I didn't ask for anything fancy, just whispered, "If anyone's listening, please show me there's still hope for my boy." The next morning, I found myself walking alone along an old trail that runs through the edge of our land. It's where my dad used to take us when I was little to watch the fireflies. I hadn't stepped foot there in years. The grass was brittle, the trees bare. I sat down on a large flat rock near the only oak tree that still stood tall. That's when I saw her. A woman? She stood quietly wearing a pale blue cloak that seemed to shimmer in the evening light. Her eyes, though far away, had something unexplainable in them. Kindness, peace, recognition. I couldn't move. My heart was pounding. I tried to blink, to breathe, to process what I was seeing. I wondered if it was just a hallucination, product of stress and grief. But she just looked at me and smiled. And in that smile, something inside me cracked open. For the first time in months, I felt the weight on my shoulders begin to lift, even if just a little. There were no beams of light, no angelic chorus, just that gaze, that moment. And when I returned home, Amanda asked what had happened. I told her everything. Her eyes welled up as she listened. "It was Our Lady of Fatima," she said. "She sent you a sign." From that day on, something changed inside me. Not that the pain disappeared, but now there was a flicker, a presence, something telling me that even without answers, faith still mattered. I started carrying the rosary with me, even though I didn't know all the prayers. I'd speak to that image of the woman in blue like she was an old friend. And slowly, I realized it wasn't just for Amanda's sake anymore. It was keeping me going too. Our miracle still felt far away. Noah continued his treatments. The days were hard, but now every small thing, a sip of water he managed to take, the faint smile he gave when I cracked a joke, felt like a beam of sunlight breaking through the clouds. And I, a man of few words, was beginning to understand what faith really meant. Summer passed without a harvest, and autumn arrived, painting the trees in shades of orange and brown, as if the world outside reflected the weariness inside our home. Noah continued his treatments. His hair had fallen out almost entirely, and the chemo left him drained, his eyes hollow and hands cold. But even on his worst days, he still managed to whisper, "I love you," before falling asleep. That both shattered and strengthened me at once. Amanda became a pillar of strength. Between medication, sleepless nights, and makeshift homework sessions to keep Noah's mind busy, she held it all together like a rock. I did what I could, tending to the animals, managing the water lines, trying to save what I could of the land. But honestly, we were just surviving. One November afternoon, Noah had a severe episode. His heartbeat slowed. His breathing became shallow. We rushed him to the hospital. Amanda stayed with him, and I drove back to the farm alone that night, my heart breaking in silence. The stillness of the house was unbearable. I went back to the oak tree like my feet knew the way by instinct. I knelt on the cold, hard ground, closed my eyes, and pleaded with everything I had. Our Lady of Fatima, if you really came to me, please don't leave us now. And then the wind changed. The air warmed despite the crisp fall chill. I heard a faint melody, so soft it could have been imagined. I opened my eyes. No one was there, but I felt her, as clearly as the first time, as if she were sitting beside me. The next morning at the hospital, Amanda met me with a faint smile. She said Noah had slept well, and the doctor seemed surprised by how stable he was. It wasn't a cure, it wasn't some sudden miracle, but it was something, a start, a new breath. From that day on, I started walking Noah up and down the hospital corridors when he had the strength. He loved seeing the sky through the window. One afternoon, while we watched a little bird hop along the sill, he asked me, "Dad, do you think heaven is real?" I froze. Then I took a breath and answered, "I think it is. I think there's a kind of heaven inside us too, and sometimes someone special comes to remind us of that." He looked at me and gave a soft smile. "Like the blue lady you saw, right?" My eyes filled with tears. Amanda had told him the story, and she told me that during fevers and rough nights, he would whisper, "She's going to protect me." Those words stayed with me for weeks. I didn't see her again, but her presence never left, quiet and constant, like a breeze you can't see but always feel. Amanda and I started praying together every night, even if it was just a simple Our Father and a Hail Mary. Faith wasn't a habit anymore. It was our home rebuilt. Out in the fields, the soil still looked dry and tired, but I started planting anyway. Small seeds. I buried them in the brittle earth like I was burying a promise. I also began repairing an old shed my grandfather had built, not because we needed it, because I needed to believe in something again, in the future. One afternoon, while cleaning out a corner of the shed, I found an old medal of Our Lady of Fatima nailed to a wooden beam covered in dust and spider webs. It had belonged to my grandmother, someone I barely remembered. Amanda cried when she saw it. "She's here, in everything," she said. "She's calling us to keep believing." We started carrying the medal with us, each of us taking turns, with it in our pockets, and gradually we began noticing changes. The doctor said Noah was responding better than expected to the new combination of treatments, tiny signs, quiet miracles. We knew, deep down, that the road ahead would still be hard, that the pain wasn't over, but we were ready to keep going. Winter came like a blade. Frost covered the farm and killed off the last leaves that had managed to hold on. The water pipes froze twice in January, and we had to fix the generator in a rush when the power went out during a stormy night. Amanda and I took turns doing everything. She stayed at the hospital. I kept the house running. And when we could, we met somewhere in the middle, just to exchange strength. Everything around us felt like it was falling apart, yet the bond between us grew stronger in the pain. We were soldiers in the same war. During the second week of February, the doctors called us in for a talk. The standard treatment had run its course. The cancer cells were multiplying again. We had to consider an experimental therapy, risky, expensive, and with no guarantees. Amanda gripped my hand so tightly I could feel her bones trembling. "What if he can't handle it?" she asked, her voice fragile. The doctor didn't sugarcoat it. "We don't know, but it might be the only real shot at reversing this." We left the hospital in silence. No music in the car, just the sound of wind hitting the windows, like the world was trying to tell us something. When we got home, I found the Fátima medal lying on the living room floor. Amanda said she had left it on the nightstand like always. Maybe it's a sign, she whispered. I didn't answer, but the image of it stayed in my mind all night. At dawn the next day, I got up and headed straight for the field. My boots sank into the thawing, muddy ground. I walked to the oak tree, now looking smaller somehow, like it too was tired of the cold. I dropped to my knees, and for the first time in months, cried without caring who might see. I yelled. I punched the earth. You said you'd stay with us. You said faith was enough. So why is this happening? That's when I heard soft footsteps behind me. I turned quickly, and there she was. It wasn't like the first time. No blinding presence, no overwhelming light. This time she appeared softer, almost translucent, wrapped in a pale glow. She didn't move, but her eyes cut straight through me. I felt ashamed for yelling, but she didn't judge me. Her face held something deeper, a mix of sorrow and compassion. She knelt down without ever touching the ground, and she said, "Love isn't measured by the absence of pain. It's measured by those who keep going, even while bleeding." Then she vanished like mist under the morning sun. I stayed there on my knees for what felt like hours. When I finally returned, Amanda was waiting, her eyes swollen but calm. "I felt her today," she said. While I dozed off with the rosary in my hand, I dreamed of a field full of flowers. She told me, "Be brave." That's when we made the decision. We signed the papers for the experimental therapy, not out of desperation, but because we believed, not in odds, in faith. In the following days, Noah was admitted for prep. He grew even thinner, slept through most of the day. But even in that fragile state, he'd smile occasionally and say things like, "Mommy, the blue lady said we'll get to play soon." The doctor chalked it up to side effects. We knew better. There were nights I couldn't sleep. I'd just sit and watch him, listen to the machines, and pray, not only for healing, but for strength, for meaning, for anything that would keep my heart from caving in. Then one cold Saturday, while Amanda dozed off in the chair beside the hospital bed, Noah opened his eyes for a moment. He looked at me and said in a hoarse whisper, "Daddy, when all this is over, can I plant a tree by the oak field?" And before I could answer, he added, "She said it'll grow really big and beautiful." I promised him we would, even though I didn't know if I'd get the chance to keep that promise. The therapy began on a cold morning in March. The sky was gray. The trees swayed without rhythm, like even the wind was restless. Amanda and I said goodbye to Noah before. They took him into the procedure room. We kissed his forehead and told him we'd be waiting right outside, our hearts beating alongside his. The hours that followed were a blur. I walked in circles around the hospital courtyard, staring at the sky, searching for any crack in the clouds, as if an answer might break through. Amanda prayed quietly, eyes closed, her grandmother's rosary wrapped around her fingers. Faith wasn't just a choice anymore. It was the only bridge between us and despair. When the doctors came back, they told us the procedure had gone smoothly, no immediate complications. Noah was being transferred to recovery, still unconscious but stable. That was all we could ask for. We slept at the hospital that night, Amanda in the chair, me curled up in a corner of the room. I had a dream, or maybe it was something more. I was back in the field, the old trail. The oak tree, now in bloom, swayed gently, and there she was again, the woman in blue, waiting. This time her feet touched the ground. Her cloak glowed brighter, and her gaze, it held something final, as if she were revealing a truth that had always been there. She walked toward me, extended her hand, and said, "The most precious harvest doesn't grow from the soil, it grows from perseverance." I woke up with tears streaming down my face, but my chest felt lighter. I looked at Noah, still asleep, but his face seemed less pale. Amanda woke shortly after. "Did you dream of her?" she asked, as if she already knew. I nodded. She said, "We're almost there." The following days were tough. Noah had a fever, vomited often, his body ached. There were moments I thought he wouldn't make it. Amanda stayed by his side the entire time. I stepped out for air sometimes, just to cry where no one could see. But I always came back, always with the medal in my pocket, and a silent prayer on my lips. In the third week, the fever finally broke. The blood work started showing a faint improvement. His cells were responding. It was the beginning of something. The doctors were still cautious, but began using words like potential, positive response, cellular activation. We came back home in early April. Noah still needed close monitoring, but for the first time in months, he could sleep in his own bed. Amanda redecorated his room with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. I bought a small tree sapling, like I'd promised, and planted it next to the old oak where everything had started. As I dug into the earth, I remembered the first time I knelt there. All the words I had cried out, the tears, the questions that had no answers, but now something felt different in the soil. It was softer, more alive. I planted that sapling with care, like I was planting a piece of our soul into the ground. Noah watched from the window, smiled, waved, and whispered, "She's going to like it." Weeks passed, and with them, laughter slowly returned. Noah could walk a bit more each day. Amanda went back to teaching part-time, and I returned to the land, not like before, but with new eyes. Every planting now was an act of gratitude. Every sunrise, a new beginning. The field would never be the same, neither would we, because we learned that miracles don't always come in flashes of light. Sometimes they come in soft gestures, unexpected encounters, silent presences that change everything. Spring didn't just bring flowers to the land, it brought a new season into our lives. Noah, our little warrior, was back to playing in the yard. His legs were still weak, but there was a determination in his steps we'd never seen before. He walked slowly after the chickens, laughed at the leaves blowing in the wind, and every night before bed, he touched his forehead to the Fátima medal resting on his nightstand. The tree we planted next to the oak began to bloom too, a cherry. Tree still fragile, still small, but alive. Every day I watered it with the same care I used to help Noah brush his teeth or walk to the porch, and each time the wind rustled through its branches, I felt deep in my soul that the woman in blue was still with us, still walking alongside us. In May, Noah's doctor called us in for a major consultation. Amanda and I were nervous, holding hands like kids bracing for the news. The doctor looked at us and smiled softly. The latest tests show complete remission. The response exceeded our expectations. Amanda broke down in tears. I buried my face in my hands and gave thanks in silence, but I knew this wasn't just luck. This was faith, a seed of hope planted in dry ground, watered with pain, perseverance, and love. This was her, the woman in blue who never left, even when doubt crawled into our hearts like a cold shadow. We decided to hold a small gathering at the farm. Nothing fancy, just neighbors, family, friends, people who cried with us, prayed with us, kept the chain from breaking. Amanda baked a cake, Noah helped set the tables, and me, I was just grateful. During the celebration, an elderly man approached. I didn't know him well. He said he'd heard our story, and that many years ago, he too had seen a woman in blue, standing on a dirt road as he drove his sick wife to the hospital. "She shows up when your faith is about to crack," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And when she comes, it's to remind you, you're not alone." After that day, Noah kept getting stronger. He went back to school with some precautions. Amanda and I renewed our wedding vows under the oak tree. The farm, still modest, had become sacred ground, and the cherry tree, our tree of promises, blossomed brighter every year. Today, as I share this story, I'm not just celebrating a miracle. I'm telling you, miracles come in many forms. Some heal the body, some heal the soul, some change your life, others change how you see life. But all of them, every last one, begin with a simple act of faith. If you've made it this far with an open heart, thank you. Truly, please subscribe to this channel so that stories like this can reach people who need a little light in the dark. It helps us keep sharing faith, love, and hope with those who might be on the edge of giving up. Leave a comment below. What's the biggest test of faith you've ever faced? Share your story. Let's build a space of support where no one has to face their pain alone. And tell us, what did this story teach you about hope? We're here to listen, to feel it with you, and maybe, just maybe, to find our own Blue Lady, even if she only shows up in the silence of a prayer.